Welcome to Talking Plant Protein. I'm Nicole Astra. Another Nicole is joining me in the hot seat today from PURIS. Please welcome Nicole Atchison to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about this. This is one of my favorite topics.
Right. And I'm so excited to have PURIS. You're such a strong voice in the industry. And we'll get to why you're on the show. We've got a conference coming up where you're going to be talking. But first, I want to ask you, what's your response to multiple sources reporting that there's already been a dip in sales for plant-based products? Of course, we think they are absolutely here to stay, but I wanted to get your perspective on that.
Well, it's an interesting question, but before I answer, I want to take you back a little bit in time. When we started our company, it was in the mid-'80s. So you can imagine what the sales of plant-based foods were at that time. Very limited. And the products were okay, but mediocre as best.
Oh, yeah, they weren't great.
Yeah, and so through the last 30 years, we've been true believers. So a short-term, a couple year dip isn't going to change our belief in the long-term potential of plant-based.
Right.
And I think it's only gaining momentum. And any transformation of an industry isn't going to be perfect. I think our saying in PURIS is what we're doing is hard. And it's not just what we PURIS are doing, but what the industry is doing. This is hard. And there's some quick wins, but I think we also have to be looking at the long-term, the long-term outcomes and what's that goal on the horizon that we're all working towards, because that's how we think about it. And so we are here to partner with all of our customers and our farmer partners to really say, like, we're here to stay. And this potential, the products are getting better and better every quarter, every day, which is introducing more people to quality products that they want to try again. So we remain excited, and we think that there's a ton of growth ahead and that there's a ton of investment needed so that we can really capture the full potential of the market.
Okay, so talking about long-term, what about Climatesmart agriculture?
Yeah, so this has been, I think the plant protein movement is such an interesting way to get consumers connected to agriculture in a way that isn't necessarily always done in food systems. And so we're a really exciting development over the past couple weeks has been as part of the infrastructure package to the government. They have announced, the USDA has announced the partnerships for Climatesmart Agriculture Grant, which is really promoting the adoption of climate-friendly cropping systems in the United States. And this is exciting for PURIS, but I think also for the overall plant-based community, because we can use this as an opportunity to really connect the dots between climate-friendly foods and how that impacts our American farming system, and that these things can and should go hand in hand. There's some, negative conversation around plant-based being very destructive for American farmland. And I would argue that isn't the case always, and it definitely doesn't have to be the case. There is a lot of ways that plant-based foods can really support the transition of agriculture to climate-smart practices, using crops like peas that can fix nitrogen from the air and reduce emissions, store carbon, increase protein production per acre, and really enable our American farming system to feed more people sustainably. So what's exciting to us about this is that this is a conversation that hasn't been being had for decades. And to see this being front and center in the USDA, and then at conferences like World AgriTech, not just talking about conventional cropping systems, but how do we scale sustainable proteins? It's this kind of coalescence of all of these really interesting topics that have been core to PURIS for 3 decades, but now are mainstream, gaining traction, and poised to really be an instrumental part of our food system going forward. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, and proving just how important it all is for everybody to really be kind of moving that direction. So let's talk about some of your farmer partners. And you do a lot of work with seeds. We say, okay, the products are getting better, but it is probably very much due to the ingredient getting better. Tell me the research, the development behind working all the way down at the seed level.
Absolutely. So our business was founded by my father about 35 years ago. And in his heart of hearts, he's a plant breeder. He loves to be in a field looking at plants and understanding the differences of them. And so that has been core to our plan and portfolio my entire life. And we continue that program today, where we've really invested many, many years in developing non-GMO seeds with the destination of food production in mind. And I think that's a really different approach, especially when you think about the 90s and the early 2000s, of what the purpose of crop development was. It was, of course, agronomics, because if it doesn't yield, it doesn't matter to a farmer. So it has to yield, it has to have disease resistance, it has to have pest resistance. But if you're also developing these products to deliver nutritional benefits, those macronutritional factors, color, texture, shape, all of the things that are important for the food system, you can have an interesting combination. And that's really been our approach, is focusing on crops that have the end product in mind, which is food for people. And most crops that are grown in the US today are going into fuel, so ethanol, now more biodiesel, or feed, going in animal feed. And so the amount that's actually going directly to human nutrition is relatively small. And so as we look kind of forward, what do the consumers want? Well, more and more consumers want to understand where their food comes from. So traceability, sustainability, understanding if their food has been genetically modified or not, just having the ability to make their own choices and to vote with their dollars on what they're looking for. And for PURIS, that's what we're focused on, being able to provide those options so that consumers they have options available to them when they want to make those choices.
And the consumer has been very vocal about that is what they want. And that's at the level of transparency that we're at and where we're headed. I think the U.S. is behind a little bit as far as the labeling, but that's what the consumer is after. Let's switch gears then to the labeling. And do you find that your end product, is that story told in the packaging or to the consumer, that you have carefully crafted and grown in the right way? Do you get to tell the consumer that?
It depends on the brand, and some brands really want to lean in and do that, and those are the brands who are making very conscious choices on the various ingredients that they're putting together. And a lot of times in food, we're talking about the end product and we're talking about agriculture, but there's this whole messy middle in between that a lot of times gets, I don't think overlooked is the right word, but it kind of gets skipped over in the conversation. But that messy middle, the transformation of crops into usable formats, so ingredients and other things that actually make it usable for food, is hard, because it requires scale to make it actually work. And as you go to scale, it makes it harder to deliver on the traceability. And so it's these kind of opposing forces that do make some of those on-pack labelings harder than they maybe appear to be on the outside, if you want to do it at scale. So I think what's exciting about new technologies in play today, whether it's blockchain or digital, ag-tech solutions that are driving more visibility through the entire supply chain, that's going to enable the industry to be able to tell that story. And because I think every brand wants to, but the complexity of how to do it authentically, and does every ingredient in your mix hold those same values? And if one doesn't, are you comfortable with that? And right. So I think it's going to really be, it starts with marketing, sure, but it needs to get down to the procurement organization who's purchasing the ingredients and having those other things in mind. So not just price, but price, greenhouse gas footprint, sustainability claims, traceability, and visibility to on-farm. All of those will have to gain more equal footing to really enable that transparency to pull through.
Well, and helping with that very messy middle ground is World AgriTech, and you're going to be on a panel discussion, I understand. So tell me what to expect from PURIS there.
Yeah, so I'll be speaking on a panel about scaling a sustainable protein supply, and kind of to my earlier point, the fact that we're having this conversation on we have members from Cargill and Bunge and others joining, I think it shows where we're at as an industry, that this is an important topic. It's a relevant topic, and it's not just a fringe topic anymore.
Right.
And I think that's what's exciting to PURIS, is that these kind of conversations are being had, not just on the sides or in specialty arenas, but on the main stage. And there's a whole gradient of different practices in agriculture, and it's really easy to label things as good and bad, but things are never good fully or never bad fully. And so what we're really focused on is how can we take that gradient and move it along towards the positive direction, but not throw the baby out with the bathwater if everything isn't perfect. So really trying to enable positive changes in a way that drives markets for farmers and connects our branded partners to quality sources of ingredients that they're proud to share the story on.
Well, Nicole, I appreciate your time on Talking Plant Protein. Our audience can learn more from PURIS in San Francisco, March 22nd and 23rd. Thanks so much.
Thank you.